What's going on, ATVH family? It's your boy Trey, dropping gems. And today I want to go over the topic of accountability. In this video, I want to go over 4 reasons why people avoid accountability, and then ultimately what that means about themselves and what that means about you because you're around them. In order to handle all that, we got to define what accountability is first. And my personal definition of accountability is just the ability to align yourself and your actions with the truth. So whether that's, what you're saying to yourself, what you're saying to others, what you're doing to others, what you're doing to yourself, your ability to align those things with the truth is the level of accountability that you have. And there's really 2 ways that people interact with accountability. You're gonna figure that out, probably based off what you've lived already, but also throughout this video, realize that people either respond A, positive, or B, negative. There's not really an in-between. So with that being said, let's get to the start of the video. Let's fucking go. All right, so the first reason why people respond negatively to accountability is because they don't understand their biology. And let me apologize for my handwriting. It's pretty shit, but have you went to college? Yeah, me. But understanding your biology is really, really important for taking accountability, because your comfort with the truth is what allows you to align with it. And the thing that allows you to be comfortable in any situation is your nervous system. You have 2 main parts to your nervous system. So you have your central nervous system, that's your brain, your spinal cord, and your eyes. And then you have your peripheral nervous system, which is every other nerve in your body that's outside of the spinal cord, brain, and eyes. So the part of the nervous system we're going to be talking about for the specifics of accountability is going to be your peripheral nervous system. And in your peripheral nervous system, you have 2 parts of that as well. So you have your parasympathetic nervous system, and then you have your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is responsible for your fight and flight responses, and then your parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for something that they call your rest and digest system. So like involuntary things that you have to do daily, right? Your bowel movements and stuff going on in your stomach. You're not thinking about digesting food, it just happens. Context out of the way, they're like a coin, right? Your body in a certain situation will be in rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system, because it's calm, it's relaxed, there's no danger. When your body senses a threat, it activates that sympathetic nervous system, and that's where you get your fight or flight. And the reason that that's important, especially in taking accountability, is because people sometimes begin to associate a threat with accountability. And this is where it starts to get really psychological. So if you like psychology, you're gonna like this video. If you don't like this psychological shit, then you should probably click off the video, because it's gonna get deep. Yeah, so let's say that as a kid, or there was an event in your life to where you decided to take accountability, right? You aligned yourself with the truth. And as a result of doing that, you were met with negative reactions, or you were met with consequences that might not have been comparable to the situation at hand. So instead of having a positive interaction with accountability in this situation, you had a negative interaction with this situation due to taking accountability. If that begins to occur repeatedly, your nervous system begins to calibrate to its environment. So your nervous system is designed to be able to feel comfort in things that repeat. Your nervous system likes repeating things. That's why people form habits, because your nervous system loves to repeat things. So understanding that, think about how a repeated instance of you having a negative experience with accountability will affect your development as a kid into adulthood. And then, even if stuff begins to happen repeatedly in adulthood, people are designed to be conditioned, classical conditioning, whatever you want to call it. People are designed to become conditioned. And if you don't understand this phenomenon, then you're more likely to be conditioned than to condition yourself. The ability to condition yourself is where your power comes from. So again, back to taking accountability, right? If you don't know how to condition yourself, if you do need to be reconditioned to accountability, if you don't know how to do that, then you're going to be stuck in a perpetual state of lacking the ability to take accountability, because you're not even cognitively aware of the fact that you can't take it. And if you are, you don't know the steps on how to break that loop. So that's the biological reason why you probably can't take accountability. All right, reason number 2 on why some people can't take accountability is going to be the weight that they're carrying that they haven't processed. So when I say weight, I'm referring to kind of what we were getting at before, but unprocessed trauma, you know, not dealing with your triggers, things that bother you as a human, you know, not setting boundaries. There's weights that you're carrying that you're not aware of. And when you're not aware of those weights and those things that bother your human, you begin to carry something called emotional debt. And you don't feel emotional debt until you have to pay it back. So it's important to be aware of, you know, what you don't like, what you do like. When somebody says something that fucks with you a little bit, you know, let them know, hey, I don't like that, setting boundaries, you know, stop letting people fuck with you. Like, you have to be cognizant of these things, because if you're not, and you're carrying this weight unconsciously, sometimes what people tend to do is project. So let's say, you know, it's fucking Trey, right? Trey's been dealing with hard days at work. Trey's been dealing with his girlfriend's on bullshit and it's pissing him off. Trey goes to work in a bad mood and he's dealing with a patient. He has an angry attitude with that patient and he says something that's kind of rude to this patient. Well, why did Trey say that? He didn't say that because the patient did anything wrong to him. He said that because he didn't deal with the unprocessed emotions and weight of what he had going on in his personal life. So now he took it out on somebody else, and as a result, you're hurting somebody else or attempting to hurt somebody else now out of a projection, rather than just dealing with your shit and moving on and, you know, having a nice and fucking dandy day. So you're not necessarily verbally avoiding accountability in that situation, but the fact that you're not aligned with the truth of the situation is where the lack of accountability comes in. And that's why I have that certain definition, like I said at the beginning of the video. Like, if you're not aligned with the truth, then you're not aligned with accountability and you're not an accountable person, period. All right, this is reason number 3. And this is my favorite, actually, because I think this is probably the hardest one to execute. But identity is going to be huge for learning how to take accountability. And it's why a lot of people don't take accountability, is because their identity is not aligned with what an accountable person would do. Remember what I said before. I said your nervous system loves to what? It loves to form habits. It loves to repeat things because it feels safe in repetition. And repetition is how you build an identity. When we talk about identities, right? Let's say somebody has the identity of a doctor. I can't just say tomorrow and wake up and be like, I'm a fucking doctor, if I haven't put in the 8 years of school, eight plus years of school, and, you know, taken all these board exams and done what I needed to do to actually become a doctor, right? You have to prove that to yourself that you are that identity, right? Once you've proven that to yourself, your nervous system actually believes you're that identity, and therefore you are. It's very, very important that you're aware of how building an identity works, because if you don't actively build your identity in a manner that has some integrity to it, then you're going to be in a perpetual state of lying, because you don't believe that you are who you say you are. So you're lying to yourself, you're not operating in the truth, and therefore you don't have accountability. Build an identity that you can believe in, and in order to do that, you have to actually fucking do the shit. If you don't have a steady identity, if you haven't done the work to build a steady identity, then you don't have a calm nervous system, and it feels almost bad to take accountability because you know that you're lying to yourself. And that kind of flows into the 4th reason. And that 4th reason being friction. And friction is pretty straightforward. It's just the actual feelings of not having an aligned lifestyle, right? If Kyle knows he's capping, bro, if Kyle knows that he's lying to himself and putting up a facade, bro, he's gonna feel that friction constantly throughout the day. It's like the old saying when you're a kid, oh, like Like lies grow like weeds. Like they just, your mind constantly knows that they grow and grow and grow. And they don't grow from stability. They grow from a lack of integrity. Like literally, things that lack integrity break. It's the definition. So when there's a lot of friction, it kind of ties back into the emotional debt thing I was talking about before. When there's a lot of friction, you feel that. And people don't like to feel friction. You know, people like comfort. You know, that's the baseline homeostasis of how human works. Most people like comfort. Most people don't want to feel friction, because friction means that there's something that's not working, or there's something that's, you know, causing some flustering or frustration, right? People tend to avoid that because it fucking sucks. When there's friction, you know, a lot of things break. When there's friction, there might be struggle. But friction doesn't always mean that there's something bad going on, that there's something wrong going on. A lot of times friction just means, you know, maybe you should take a look in this direction. Maybe there's friction in this area of your life because it needs tending to. People who avoid friction are avoiding accountability, and they avoid it because they don't like discomfort. And I kind of want to tie all this together right quick, because friction, the biology of your nervous system, your identity, and then the unprocessed weight you're carrying, that all either creates a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop. Let's say I'm not fucking taking care of my nervous system. All right, that's gonna lead to some unprocessed weight going on. And then that unprocessed weight is therefore gonna affect your identity. It's gonna cause friction in your life. And the friction is what fucks shit up, because friction creates heat, and heat burns things. But let's say you are taking care of your nervous system, right? You're, making sure you're producing positive habits, and, you know, teaching your nervous system how to feel safe in the truth, right? Well, you're not going to have as much unprocessed weight to carry because you're already operating at a base level of truth. Once you're not carrying as much weight, your identity is actually able to flourish and do things naturally, right? You're going to be building an identity in truth. So your identity is not going to be fragile. You're not going to have a fragile ego that's going to break super easily. And then once your ego is somewhat stable and able to actually endure the things that life throws at you, there's less friction, because there's no lies, there's nothing to rub against the truth. You're operating in the truth. You're going with the flow of how life is supposed to be, truth and freedom. So these 4 categories right here, you can create a positive or negative feedback loop, and it's up to you to decide where you want to end up at, where you're going to respond to accountability positively or negatively. There's really no in between, because if you do half of these right and half of these wrong, well, then you're still not accountable. So you just make a fucking choice. I'm going to be somebody who operates to the truth, or I'm going to be somebody who's just capping, and that's the bottom line. Now that we understand how these pillars work, or these 4 reasons work together and what they actually are, I want to talk about how to actually interact with yourself and how to interact with people who may lack accountability. And I don't want to demonize the lack of accountability, because there are, I want to say, reasons that people lack it, right? Like, it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror. It's hard to deal with the things that you've been avoiding for a long time. Like, it is hard to do that. I'm not going to sit here and act like that shit's easy. But what I am going to say is, it's your personal responsibility to protect yourself from situations that might cause you harm due to the lack of accountability. And it's your responsibility to deal with your own internal struggles and the blind spot that you might be lacking accountability in. So the best choice for dealing with other people who lack accountability, I'm not gonna lie, is just to not interact with them motherfuckers. I ain't gonna lie. Like you can't control anybody. You can't force anybody to do anything, even if you think it's the right thing to do. And it might actually be the right thing to do, but you can't force shit on nobody, right? You could lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. You know, that's pretty straightforward. And the reason behind that is because you're stealing from yourself when you do that. Because if somebody doesn't want to do something, they're not going to do it. So why waste your energy on trying to get them to do something they don't want to do in the first place? Their heart's already made up, right? Like God already hardened their hearts, so let them do what they want to do. Now, for dealing with yourself, this one's a little bit trickier because your own brain wants to keep lying to you sometimes. You really gotta look at yourself and be like, all right, where the fuck am I fucking up at? Where am I not looking in the mirror? Like when I wake up in the morning, and I said I'm gonna go to the gym and nobody else is watching. Did I really fucking go to the gym? Did I really do that? If I said, hey, I'm gonna stop complaining about this thing, I'm gonna stop talking about people, I'm gonna stop doing this or this or that. Do you really hold yourself to that standard? That's the difference between having a positive or a negative relationship with yourself. Because if you can't keep it 100 with yourself, then you can't trust yourself, and then that's where your identity crumbles. Because if you can't trust yourself, you can't build yourself, man. You don't even trust yourself. How are you gonna build anything? You don't trust yourself to build it. So you have to look. We're gonna write this big motherfucking word right here. It's gonna take some time. And you really have to look at that shit hard. This isn't no like half glance. This is none of that. Like, we're not doing that. This is a hard look in the mirror. Like, you really like looking at your shit like, damn, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I lying to myself? Why am I not going to the function I said I was gonna go to with my homeboy? And why didn't I just tell him the truth? I just didn't want to go. Why am I not studying for this test I had, knowing damn well it's coming up this week? Why am I not doing what I'm supposed to do? Why am I not doing what God told me to do? Like, shit like that. You gotta look internally. And the more you look internally, initially, the more painful it becomes. But as you go through the process of looking at yourself internally and really being honest with yourself, you'll eventually get through the process. It's like lifting weights. Shit's kind of hard right here. But, once you pass a certain threshold, damn, I'm stuttering. Once you pass a certain threshold, you get through the rep, you got to work in, and it's time to grow. You have to maintain your sense of integrity and purpose. That way you can operate as a human and really deconstruct all that insecurity and bullshit that's holding you back. It's a lot more for yourself than what it is for others, because you're not worried about other people. You can't control other people, you can control you. So focus on you and focus on what you can do better, and then you'll get better results. People who lack accountability, and really remember this shit, people who lack accountability do not like themselves. And whether that's conscious or unconscious isn't your concern. Like, if you're not willing to look at yourself truthfully, and you're not willing to really face the friction of your life, the unprocessed things of your life, if you're not willing to really do that for your own health, for the health of the people around you, if you're not really willing to do that work, then you don't like yourself, because you don't like what you're gonna see when you do that. And that's the funny part. Nobody said you have to fucking like it. It's fine if you don't, but it's still your responsibility to go through that process and work through it, because that unprocessed bullshit that you got going on is bleeding on to other people. And that's not fucking cool. So learn to like yourself. Learn to do the right thing. Deal with your shit. Maybe you got to go to therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I just have developed the tools to be able to understand this from a kind of analytical and scientific perspective, because I'm a fucking nerd. And I did the work myself. So that's where this is coming from for me. And then obviously the Most High, he helped me understand this, gave me understanding. Other than that, it's like, just do the work. I promise you it works out, and you will like yourself when you understand yourself, but don't run away from yourself. When you run away from yourself, you run away from the truth. And when you run away from the truth, shit falls apart. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all don't really know me too well yet, but I promise you, you're gonna get to know me very, very well. We're gonna start dropping videos a lot more consistently, and I want you guys to give me feedback. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Probably doesn't fucking matter, because I'm gonna post what I want, but the constructive criticism always helps. So appreciate you guys. Love, peace.